Hello my friends, my name is Rich and welcome to Greatest Rock and Metal, where I talk about what are for me the greatest rock albums and gigs of all time, based on my many years of listening to thousands of CDs and attending hundreds of gigs. Today it's going to be an album review. If you enjoy what you see today, please press the red button to subscribe to the channel so that you can see future episodes of Greatest Rock and Metal, and coming very soon after this, another episode about AC/DC. Because today is the album review for the new AC/DC album titled Power Up. I'll come back to that in a little while. But first I'd like to take you back a few years to 2015. It's a beautiful summer's evening in the UK in July, and I'm in Wembley Stadium with my two best mates, Paul and Gordon, and we are rocking out to AC/DC, playing on the Rock or Bust World Tour to promote the Rock or Bust album that you see over there. We were having a brilliant time. You always have a brilliant time when you see AC/DC live. They do not disappoint. And we all left the stadium, big smiles, happy as Larry. And then a few months later I get a phone call from Paul, and he's saying, Rich, AC/DC are coming back to the UK. Are you going to come over? What he means by that is because I don't live in the UK anymore, so he was asking if I wanted to travel over there to see the band. And I thought about it a little bit, but to be honest, it was the same tour, the Rock or Bust tour, and it was probably going to be the same set list, the same stage show, so I thought, okay, I'll give it a miss because it's quite expensive for me to travel there. As time went on into now 2016 and the date for the concert gets nearer, the announcement was made that Brian Johnson, the singer in AC/DC since 1980, would not be performing with the band. He had had to leave the band because of terrible hearing issues, and as a result was going to be replaced, we later learned, by Guns N' Roses singer AXL Rose. Now those of you who follow Guns N' Roses, very much like myself, I've been a Guns N' Roses fan right from the very beginning, will know that AXL is a big AC/DC fan. And will also know that he was going to be a very good fit. If you go way back in the Guns N' Roses discography, you'll hear them do a superb version of Whole Lotta Rosie. And AXL's voice is a great fit for both the Bon Scott era songs and the Brian Johnson era songs. So it was actually a good choice. It was also huge star quality, because let's be honest, for Brian Johnson not to be fronting the band, that was going to be a real kick in the teeth, no pun intended, for those of you who know your AC/DC songs, for those going to see the band. So AC/DC really had to get a star name in there. They're going to replace him as a vocalist, and you can't get a bigger rock star than AXL Rose for sure. So all of a sudden I find the money, and there I am now in the Olympic Stadium in London in the UK. The Olympic Stadium is the place where West Ham United football club play. But this was to be the first rock concert ever to be held in the Olympic Stadium. And I was there. June 2016. I had to be there. This was AC/DC with AXL. This was going to be a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I wanted to be there. I followed AC/DC from a very young age. I followed Guns N' Roses from the beginning. I wanted to be at this gig. I am so glad I was. I got there early, was right down the front, and I witnessed a phenomenal performance. The band was on fire that day, and AXL was a completely different kind of frontman to that he is in Guns N' Roses. He realised that Angus is the frontman for AC/DC, and AXL played his part standing back in the wings a little bit when it was time for Angus to take the spotlight. But also he did bring that element of AXL's showmanship to the show, which, and I hate saying this, but I've got to tell the truth, for me was actually just that little bit above what you get with Brian Johnson. Only a little bit. Please don't hammer me for this, AC/DC fans out there. It's just AXL is a full-on showman. Not that Brian isn't, but Brian is a little bit more laid back. And what a concert. What was also great about the concert, and I've got the set list here, is that we got 5 different songs from the year before, and actually the set list was longer. There were an extra 3 songs in the set list total. So we got the extra songs we got from the previous year were Got Some Rock and Roll Thunder from the Rock or Bust album, an old classic, Rock and Roll Damnation from Back in Black, Giving the Dog a Bone, and any song from Back in Black that's added to a set list is always going to be a bonus. The brilliant song I really love from the Highway to Hell album, If You Want Blood, You Got It. And also in the encore was the brilliant track Riff Raff. Other than that, it was the set list packed with all the AC/DC classics that you would expect to hear at an AC/DC show. Whole Lot of Rosie, Let There Be Rock, Thunderstruck, so on and so forth. You know them all, Shoot to Thrill. So, a fantastic experience. But, the lineup. So as we left that concert, the thoughts were with AC/DC, well, Brian Johnson's gone now. Also, there was no Phil Rudd on drums. He'd had some legal issues, so he'd been replaced by Chris Slade, who played with AC/DC on the Razor's Edge tour. And we'd already sadly seen that Malcolm Young could no longer play with the band, and he'd been replaced by Stevie Young, his nephew. And then, once the Rock or Bust tour was over, we had heard that bassist Cliff Williams was no longer going to be in the band. He was going to retire. So for all intents and purposes, it kind of seemed like AC/DC were over. Although there were a few rumours that that Angus didn't want to give up on the band, and that there was a strong possibility that AXL might even do the vocals on a new album. But no one really knew anything. Fast forward, the year 2020. We will talk about Power Up. But before we do that, let's take a look at rock t-shirts by the sea. Hope you enjoyed that. The year is 2018, and across the media I wake up one day to see photos of AC/DC that had been shot of them out on a balcony having a smoke, and all of a sudden there was yet another photo. And in these couple of photos put together, we see Brian Johnson, we see Phil Rudd, We see Cliff Williams, we see Stevie Young. Don't think we saw Angus. But so the word on the street is, whoa, they're recording a new album. Brian's back. There'd been no mention of it whatsoever. It had been a couple of years since the Rock or Bust tour had finished up. And now there's photos doing the rounds of it looks like AC/DC back together, but no comment from the record label or management. Fast forward to 2020, 6 years since the Rock or Bust album was released, it is announced there is going to be a new AC/DC album. In 2020, the worst year ever has suddenly got better. We're gonna get a new AC/DC album. And here it is. Titled Power Up. This is the vinyl version, and as you will see, it is fantastically produced. Great shot of the band there on the back cover. Gatefold, even though it's only a single album, a gatefold cover. Love gatefold covers. And then inside we have a few pictures, some writing about the recording and who the band is. And I have the yellow vinyl version. There is a red vinyl as well. I went for the yellow one because I got a lot of red vinyl. It's nice to have a nice yellow one. Look at that. A thing of beauty. But what is the music like? Is the music a thing of beauty? Well, let me stick this back in here a minute. Okay. I will be honest with you. The first few times I heard this album, I thought, yeah, okay. It's good. It's an AC/DC album. It's good. And one of the things with all AC/DC albums, when you listen to them the first couple of times, there's always a few tracks that jump out at you straight away. And no surprise, they always tend to be what are chosen as the singles. And the first single that was released was called Shot in the Dark. And it was a great song. Yeah, there is no doubt about it. Go check out the video on YouTube if you haven't already done so, if you don't know the song. And brilliant song, great way to introduce us to the forthcoming album. But it took me a few listens to really discover that actually this album is brilliant. It really is a grower. So any of you out there who have kind of felt like me and listened to it 3 or 4 times and you just, it's okay, yeah, it's a good album, go back to it. Trust me, go back to it. Give it a few listens. This is a great AC/DC album with lots of brilliant songs on there. And let's be honest, the last batch of AC/DC albums, going all the way back to probably the Back in Black or Let There Be Rock or Flick of the Switch, yeah. After that, the albums they've released have been pretty patchy. There's been a lot of filler amongst many of those albums. This one, I struggled to find filler. Not that every track is totally brilliant, but I wouldn't say there are any filler songs on here. And I think one of the reasons why it is so good is because what Angus did, he went back through all of the tapes and recordings that he had from over the year of his and his sadly departed brother Malcolm's riff ideas. And he mined the vault of the riff ideas, of which I'm sure they had hundreds. And he found some of Malcolm's best ideas. And even though Malcolm is no longer with us, he is credited on the album as being the co-songwriter with Angus. And I think that's what makes it such a strong album. Even though these are in effect discarded riffs that didn't get used for previous albums, there are some absolute gems amongst them. And I'm going to tell you what are, for me, my favourite 4 tracks. And the first track is actually the first track on the album, Realise. Now, again, this is one of those tracks that unusually, for me, because the first track on an AC/DC album normally is probably the best. And when I first heard this, I'm like, well, it's all right, but it's not giving me the kick in the teeth, sorry to use that pun again, that I would normally get with the first track on an AC/DC album. But it was different, that's all it was. It was a different kind of song to start the album with, and once I realised that, no pun intended again, I realised that Realise is a great song. It's just a different kind of approach for AC/DC, a band that doesn't usually do different. Yeah. Now I'm not saying it's all electronica and dance music. No, it's still AC/DC, the AC/DC sound. But it's got a different. I can't explain it. You need to hear it. It's just a different kind of vibe for AC/DC. A great opener. I love it now. I absolutely love it. It's probably become my favourite track on the album. The single, Shot in the Dark. Well, before I talk about Shot in the Dark, I should also mention that the CD version can be bought as a box set that has this nifty little gimmick here, and if we just press the button on the side, we get the opening riff to Shot in the Dark before it fades out and leaves us with the logo. And Shot in the Dark, as I mentioned before, the first single, great song, great video, great reintroduction to the sound of AC/DC, a typical boogie-woogie type of AC/DC song. No more to say on that. Let's go forward to the first track on side B of the album, Demon's Fire. This has just been released as a single. Demon's Fire, wow, brilliant song. Got a fast beat to it. You can imagine driving down the highway, down the motorway, listening to this song for sure. Demon's Fire, it's all I desire. Demon's Fire, great song. Love it. One thing I should mention about this album, Brian Johnson's vocals. They are fantastic. And in fact, the whole sound of this album is fantastic. It's produced again by Brendan O'Brien, a longtime Pearl Jam producer, and he also produced the last 2 AC/DC albums, Rock or Bust and Black Ice. And the sound is just perfect. You can clearly hear all of the instruments. It's a very well produced album. And then the last track I would choose is the last track on the album. Again, it's a slightly different kind of song for AC/DC. It's titled Code Red, and it's got a brilliant catchy chorus to it, and unusual to find such a strong song right at the end of the album. But that's like I said about this album. This is an album with just no fillers. The strong songs throughout, and it is highly recommended. Any AC/DC fans who have been sat on the fence and not sure whether to go and buy it or not, or just any rock fans who maybe not sure about AC/DC in the past, or the single hasn't grabbed them, trust me, go out there, get it. you're not going to be disappointed, but you might need a few listens for it to grow on you. So there you have it. That is my review of AC/DC's Power Up album. They're back! Yes! Now let's all hope that this damn COVID will go away and we get to see them alive again soon. Thank you very much for watching. Please press the red button to subscribe to my channel. And remember, as always, we rock!